Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher's Classroom, where we consider something from the Philosopher's Show in a more academic way. And this week we've been talking about rational egoism, the idea that the only things that we can do that are rational, the only actions that we can take, are actions that benefit ourselves the most, maximize our self-benefit. So, a little more technically speaking, here's the definition. At least remember I said that I'm getting most of these arguments from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. In the comment or in the description, I'll put the article. But the definition given from that article, rational egoism. It is necessary and sufficient for an action to be rational that it maximizes one's self-interest. All right, necessary meaning you can't be rational without your action that you're going to do maximizing your self-interest, and sufficient meaning if it does maximize that self-interest, then automatically it's a rational action. And rational, of course, meaning something like in accordance with unacceptable means of human reasoning. We actually have several ways to reason as humans. We have, many of you will be familiar with deductive logic, where you take, all A is B, all B is C, therefore all A is C, something like that. There's inductive logic, where you go from, seeing a bunch of different things and concluding a general. You see white swan, white swan, white swan, white swan. Hey, I noticed there's no black swan, so therefore I'm going to say all swans are white. There's also abductive reasoning, where you just, given the evidence that's available, you come up with a theory, whatever best explains, something like that. So let's say Dagny Taggart is considering her options. Her options are, number one, to stay and help her brother, who is a poor businessman. She can stay and help him with their failing business and try to prop up America. Or she could leave and work somewhere else where she will be happy, she'll be appreciated, right? And her services will actually benefit her. Rational egoism would be the idea that the only choice she can make that is rational is to benefit herself, therefore she should leave. If she sticks around because she says, well, he's my brother and all, then the rational egoism says not only is that false, but that's irrational, right? And we can have rational beliefs, we can have irrational beliefs. We could possibly have irrational beliefs that aren't irrational, but they're not contrary to reason either. They're just, I don't know, possibly there's just, either rational or irrational. Whatever the case, the way that human reasoning typically works is that we start off with some kind of beliefs, and we go on to new beliefs based on some kind of method. So the question then is, what justifies those initial beliefs? So for example, when I'm reasoning, I need to assume that my human reasoning works, that it's not deceiving me in some way, or that it's not all an illusion or something like that. Otherwise, I'll never get off the ground, right? There's no way to prove human reasoning works without using human reasoning, right? So you have to assume that it works. So that's one thing that you start off with as a fundamental belief, right? Rational egoism starts off with the belief that you have to maximize your self-interest. Now, that could be justified in a number of ways. It might be the case that it's self-evident, right? It might be the case that it proves itself. And I don't mean self-evident like, it just feels right? I mean more self-evident was more like, it's logically impossible for it not to be the case, right? Let's say you are, this is random, Albert Pujols, right? It would be logically impossible for you to be not Albert Pujols, right? That doesn't even make sense to say, right? So possibly it's like that, but it sure doesn't seem like this one, that you have to maximize your own self-interest is logically necessary, or that it proves itself in some way, right? It doesn't seem to be self-evident. Otherwise, we have all these other theories like, that there is some duty out there that you are obliged to follow. it doesn't seem to be like impossible, right? So it doesn't seem like it's one of those. Uh, it it, uh, it could be the case that that this is something that is part of a bigger system. You know, the idea that you have to maximize your self interest. It might be the case that it's just part of a bigger system, and it works best in that system. And when we look at the other systems, then they don't work very well. So this is an assumption that is justified by being part of a good system. Um, and if it's going to be like that, then we're going to have to have we're going to have to look at the system itself and see like how good is it, right? Um, it might be like a mathematical postulate or axiom that we're setting down, and we're saying, I'm not saying this is true yet. Let's see where we can go from this, right? And then we see how successful it was in building some kind of system, and then turn around and say, okay, do we accept this or not? So if that's the kind of the latter two are the kind of reasonings seems like more like that we're going to have to worry about, then we're going to have to look at rational egoism by looking at clear cases of rationality, things that we think for sure this is a reasonable thing for a person to do or an action to take, and say, does rational egoism cover those? So, for example, if an example of this style of reasoning. Let's say you wanted to know, let's say you go to the Staples Center and you want to know, okay, who's on the Lakers, right? You look around and you say, well, I can have two theories. Number one, the people that are on the Lakers are the people in the Lakers jerseys, right? Or number two, another theory is that I'm looking up and I see a list of people, there are 12 of them, and on the scoreboard up there, and I'm going to say whoever's on that list is on the Lakers. Well, I look around and I see people that are clearly out of shape, right? That are wearing jerseys, people that are wearing jerseys that are from Lakers jerseys, let's say from the Kobe Shaq days, or even the Magic Johnson days, the glory days of basketball. And I look around and I say, well, clearly those guys aren't on the Lakers. So it seems like my first theory doesn't seem like it works, right? I look up at those 12 names on the roster and on the list, and I say, wow, that's about the size of a basketball team. Seems like that works, right? It captures all the clear, those 12 people, I see them sitting down there. That's a good theory, right? So rational egoism is going to have to do something like that, and it may seem like rational egoism succeeds in that. In fact, this is the big argument that they have for their side. They say that it best fits our most confident judgments about rational action. In Dagny Taggart's case, when we talked about in the video on the Philosopher's Show from Atlas Shrugged, it sure seems absurd for her to stick around and help this brother of hers, right? It seems like it would be the most reasonable case for her to worry about herself. So rational egoists would say that our theory best explains those or best captures those rational cases, whereas a theory of, let's say, just moral duties doesn't seem to, because then it would say that you'd have to stick around and help your brother when that seems absurd. There is an objection to this argument, which is that there are other theories that seem like might capture some cases that are clear. So, for example, an instrumentalist theory of rationality would say that you should, an action is rational if and only if it maximizes your fulfilling of your desires. And if it maximizes your fulfilling of your desires, then automatically it's a rational decision. So now let's take instead the case of what was it again? It was if you want to let's say a loved one is out in the middle of the freeway, and you could run out and push them out of the way, and you would get hit by the car instead, and you would die, but you would save the loved one. Well, you might desire actually to save the loved one, and it seems like that's a rational thing to do, whereas rational egoism would say no, that is not, because it does not maximize your own benefit, right? It's something that would destroy your benefit. And of course, rational egoists will say, well, it benefits me because, even though I'm dying, but it seems, even though I'm dying, like, I'm dying knowing that I'm saving uh, my significant other, but even that's a stretch, I mean, I agree that it is best for you. I think it's best for you uh, to save someone you love, but at the same time, it doesn't seem to be in the way that the rational egoist wants it to be, right? It wants it to be like it physically benefits me or something like that, and that definitely is not the case. Um, Now, of course, instrumental theory will have its problems as well, right? There will be clear cases where an instrumental theorist seems to fail. So, for example, it might be, and this is given in the article as well, it might be the case that donating to charity will increase the common good, but it might be the case that I don't desire to give to charity. So, it seems rational, right, to give to charity, even if I don't desire to give to charity. So it seems like instrumental theory misses that. Again, remember, I mean, like the point here isn't that instrumental theory is true. The point is it rational? Is it the only rational game in town? And it sure seems rational for us to be able to give to charity, even when we don't feel like giving to charity. In fact, oftentimes when we do things that we don't want to do because we think it's the right thing to do, eventually we want to do that thing, right? And you probably have experienced this through um, diet or exercise or something like that. You don't want to get up. I always find this interesting. Like typically, you start an exercise routine. Day one, you're all amped, right? You're like ready to go. You go super hard, and then you're like, I can't wait for day two. Feel good. And then day two rolls around. Sometimes did some day three, and you are exhausted. You don't have that initial motivation, and oh, it's so hard, right? Day one isn't the hard one. It's like day two or three where you're just like, this sucks. So, yeah, you push through that though, and then eventually, months and months later, possibly a few years later, you realize, wow, I feel really, really good. I'm really glad I stuck to it. I want to keep going, and now you don't feel good when you don't do the exercise. You feel bad, right? I used to lift a lot. I used to weight lift a lot and run a lot, and now it's just pure surf. I found dude, I just don't want to waste my time on anything else. That's so fun. So yeah. In any case, it seems rational for me, right? Like, oh, and that the same is true for surfing, right? Like sometimes you, it's so brutal. There are some mornings, right, when I have to go out in the morning, or I'm not going to get to go out the rest of the day, or it's the best conditions in the morning. The wind's going to blow it out like it is today. Today is awful at San Clemente, and it's such a bummer because I have the day off, and the wind is awful. But you wake up and it's cold. You got to put on that wetsuit, and oh man! But you know that you're going to be stoked afterwards. So you do it anyway, even though you don't desire to do it, right? So, and it seems like that's a rational thing to do. So, yeah, the best argument for rational egoism is that it seems to fit a lot of these cases. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to fit all of the cases.